let's talk about the next puzzle called sets. This puzzle was successfully solved by 1,177 teams. And in sets, what we gave you were a whole bunch of letters that were separated by a colon. So it was like a couple letters followed by a colon, followed by more letters. And the idea to this puzzle was to try to recognize what set corresponded to each of those rows. And so you might not have started at the top. You might have looked through each of these rows. Maybe some of them ended up being easier to figure out than others. But if we start at the top and just look at that very first one, we have CZA, and then we have what looks like 11 letters that follow the colon. And so here CZA is representing some kind of set that contains 11 members, or so it would seem. And if you think about it a little bit and puzzle through what those letters might stand for, you might realize that CZA could stand for Chinese zodiac animals. And the 11 letters that follow are the first letters of 11 of the Chinese zodiac animals. So rat and tiger and rabbit and so forth. But if you're familiar with the Chinese zodiac, there are actually 12 Chinese zodiac animals, not 11. So there's a missing one here. There's a missing element from this set. And the missing element from the set is the ox. That is the one element that doesn't appear inside of the set. So we don't really know what to do with that just yet. We'll come back to that, but we'll remember that ox was the missing element from this set. And we'll apply a similar principle to each of the other sets now, each of these other rows. Each one corresponds to a set inside of which there are certain elements. So here we have SDN, and then something that starts with Z. And there aren't too many words that begin with the letter Z. So what you might imagine is that this, for example, could be single-digit numbers, where the Z stands for 0. And we have 0, T and T, or 2 and 3, F and F, or 4 and 5, and so forth. But the missing element from this set is the letter O for 1. So 1 appears to be the missing element from this set. So we'll go ahead and remember that and come back to it a little bit later. Next up was TR, and then we had DKPCFGS. This might have been a little bit easier if you knew a little bit of biology, but it turns out that TR stands for taxonomic ranks, different ways of dividing up species that live on Earth. And within taxonomic ranks, we have a bunch of different ranks, starting with kingdom, phylum, class, family, genus, and species. Domain should be there too, but the missing one is the word order, and so order was missing from that set. FOTR might have been easier if you were familiar with the series The Lord of the Rings, either the books or the movies. But it turns out the Fellowship of the Rings consists of a bunch of members, including Frodo and Sam and Gandalf. But the one that is missing from this set is Pippin. So that'll be the missing element from that set. Then we went on to DS, followed by 6 elements. Well, DS here could stand for example, deadly sins. And we know there are 7 deadly sins, but we only gave you 6 of them. And the missing deadly sin, the 7th deadly sin that we did not give you, was envy. So envy was the missing element from that set. RN, which I take it many people found to be maybe one of the easier ones to puzzle through, has I, V, X, L, C, and D, which might strike you as familiar as Roman numerals. I standing for 1, V standing for 5, X for 10, and so forth. And the missing Roman numeral, the one we didn't give you, was the letter M, which stands for the number 1000. So M, 1000, that was the missing element from that set. Next up was SR, which I take it many people found to be one of the more challenging sets to come up with. Turns out these represent Santa's reindeer. So we have Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen and a number of others, but the missing one is Donder. So that's the missing one from that set as well. And then finally, AS stood for astrological signs. We gave you all of the astrological signs except for Sagittarius, and so that was the missing element from that set, or it could have been another of the S ones, for example. And so all told, we now have one missing element from each of those sets, and down at the bottom, we gave you a bit of another clue. We gave you question mark, question mark, question mark, colon, and then 5 more question marks. And if we take the first letter from each of the sets that each of the elements that we found from each of these sets, we see OOOPEMDS, which we can now fill in to that missing set at the bottom. And we get one final set, OOOPEMDS, which if you remember from math class, stands for order of operations, of which we gave you parentheses, exponentiation, multiplication, division, and subtraction, but we left out one. So the missing element from this set is the answer to this puzzle, and the answer to the puzzle is addition.